Hello again. My name's Ryan. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I work as the International Student Engagement Co-op at the Center for Community Engaged Learning at UBC. I'm joining you today from Dunbar in Vancouver. Feel free to pop in the chat where you're joining us from today. Before we begin this session, as we are bringing this to you from our office at UBC Vancouver campus, I would like to acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam First Nation, upon which our university stands. I also invite you to reflect upon your own relationship with the land you're on, wherever that may be. Today, we'll be going over Map the System 2022. We're going to talk about what it is, what it involves, and why it might be beneficial to you as students, and also ways to get involved. We'll also be giving you the chance to talk to fellow students here about ideas and give you a chance to network with each other here today. We're also very grateful to be joined today by our guest speaker panel, consisting of last year's Map the System Global winner, Emily. And also joining us today, our very own Associate Director, Yusuf from the Center for Community Engaged Learning. I would like to extend a warm welcome to the both of you. If you want to give a wave to all of us, that would be awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing from them today, as I'm sure many of you are, but you are going to be stuck with me for a little bit longer. So let me tell you a little bit about Map the System. Map the System, it's a global competition hosted by Oxford University, and it's delivered in partnership with various educational institutions around the world. Taking a learning first approach, Map the System challenges students to apply a system lens to enable a deeper understanding of complex problems as the foundation for driving transformational change. Participants select a social or environmental issue, conduct research, and present the issue in a way that people can share and learn from. Teams from around the world come together to win prizes and a chance to present at the global final event at Oxford University. So students at UBC can register to compete as a team of up to 5 people or individually. One team member must be a current UBC student or recent alumni of 12 months from the competition registration date. The rest of the team can include anyone who is interested, including community members, faculty, or professionals. And let me speak a little bit about why you should get involved. Through Map the System, students will be gaining the skills required to analyze and ideate solutions to complex social and environmental issues by using systems mapping as an effective strategy for gaining insight into the complexities and potential solutions for some of the most challenging issues facing the world today. You get a chance to build up your resume with new skills, including research, report writing, public speaking, collaboration, professional communication, networking, and you get global recognition for submitting a published research report. I think a lot of us also know that social change is complicated. Mapping is one way of understanding its complexities. It allows us as students to think about context and the many interacting factors that contribute to the development of the issues facing us, economic forces, political movements, or global trends. It gives us the tools to understand the whole picture and takes us out of our silos. So this experience in the competition can be very rewarding. Now, I just want to note that the registration for the competition is open now until February 7th. I invite you to take a note of that. Some of the things you will need to register are the form, which you can find on Map the System's official website, the QR code here, and we'll also be popping it into the chat for you. So you'll need the form, a proposed topic or idea, and a list of team members, if any. I'd also like to flag that you are allowed to change your topic or idea after the deadline. Okay, so selecting a topic. You want to start with something you're passionate about that could be found in your discipline that you study or something you've always been interested in. The problem focus can be local or global. Some of the examples from last year include affordable housing, gentrification, youth homelessness. Similar to last year's event, students will develop projects in one of 4 track areas, which are health, climate, economic, and social. These track areas will carefully balance and allow students to champion problems that they're passionate about, but also give the ability to provide students with some guidance and resources in the specific track that their challenge might fall under. In the networking activity we have later today, you'll have a chance to hear a bit more about each track stream and what it might include. Okay, on to submission materials. Now, as part of the competition, the deadline for submitting your materials is April 3rd, and what you will be submitting are three things: a visual systems map, where you will be presenting your findings in a sort of visual ecosystem. You could use PowerPoint, Prezi, or even a JPEG. You'll also be submitting a written analysis of your research with a maximum of 3,000 words, excluding footnotes, analyzing your key findings. And finally, you'll be submitting a bibliography, citing all your sources. And your submission should address three important questions on a single focused topic: the problem landscape, the solutions landscape, and the lessons and levers of change. I'll tell you a little bit more about each of these categories. The problems landscape includes what really is the issue you're looking to understand. What's its history? What are the social, economic, corporate, environmental, and political forces maintaining the status quo? Who is affected by it? What is the size and scope of your issue? And what might the relationship of your issue be to other areas of concern? The solutions landscape involves answering questions related to who already is trying to solve this problem. What are they doing? What efforts have been tried in the past or are being tried currently? What seems to work and what hasn't worked? And what networks and resources already exist to tackle your chosen issue? Finally, in lessons and levers of change, you'll be answering what might be missing from the solutions landscape. Are there any missing links, actionable responses, or market opportunities? What role do you see in the future for both the private, public, and social sector intervening and collaborating? And what lessons have you learned yourself from researching this issue? In order to judge your submissions, the judges will be focusing on a few things. The three most important things to your research submission will be the thoroughness, the clarity, and the insight of your project. The evaluation criteria that you will be scored on when you submit your findings in our local campus final, there are 5 main criteria. Understanding the problem, how well you understand your problem, how well you understand your solutions already existing, your identification of gaps and levers, your lessons learned, as well as your approach to research and your presentations. Now, the format of Map the System includes a local campus final here at UBC, where teams will be selected and judged, and the top team will be selected to represent UBC at the virtual Canadian final, which will be taking place on between the 4th and 6th of May this year. You will be competing against top teams from across Canada for a chance to represent Canada at Oxford. And then if you're successful after this, you'll be going to the global final event, which will be taking place in June this year. Teams from all over the world will come together in Oxford to present their system, their research, their system maps, and compete for cash prizes. Just to note, as of right now, Oxford is planning to have this in person, but should any changes arise, we will communicate them to you. I do want to take this moment to let you know about some key dates for the competition. Right now, we're in the student sign-up period. As I mentioned before, the deadline for registration is February 7th. Once you've registered, you'll have about 9 to 10 weeks before your final submission is due on April 3rd. Between the 11th and 12th of April, we will be hosting our local campus final here at UBC. And then in May is the Canadian final and June is the global final. So some next steps you can take right now. I invite you to scan this QR code or access the link in the chat for our Canvas course dedicated to Map the System this year. Here you'll find a lot more resources and information based on what we've talked today. It is a really valuable resource if you want to find out more about the competition. So we'll pop the link in the chat as well for you. I also invite you to take a note of the Map the System registration form. If you, at this point, might already have a team or a topic in mind, you can already register to compete in the competition. Now, just a note, your registration will not be a tied commitment. And if you do feel like you need to, you're not able to complete the competition, you are able to drop out without any consequences. You can find out more about Map the System on their official website, mapthesystem.ca. You can also feel free to contact me if you have any further questions about the process. Before we watch this video put together by Team UBC last year, I invite Emily to just introduce herself and maybe just mention what your topic was in your in the competition last year, so you can share that with everyone before we watch the video.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So my name's Emily, and I was part of the team last year that won the Oxford Global Finals. Our topic was on urban Indigenous food insecurity in BC. So our topic focused on food insecurity, specifically impacting Indigenous peoples living in more so the Lower Mainland in BC. And so, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
In this video, we'll go over some of the challenges we faced, some of the successes, what we learned from the process, and some tips and advice for your Map the Systems submission. For some of the challenges we faced, specifically for our project, we did not have any lived experience or pre-existing relationships with Indigenous communities, and were limited in finding current information that was available. As we got further into the research, more aspects related to our topic came up. This made it challenging to clearly define the boundary and the extent of the system we presented. We also struggled with clearly and concisely presenting our research in a way that followed the submission guidelines and was easy to understand. Another challenge we faced was having a complete understanding of the terms, tools, and models involved in systems thinking, as this was a relatively new concept for us. Our group was successful because of these three key aspects. First, our group had a strong support system from UBC and the community. Many individuals mentored and guided us throughout this journey by providing us with advice on our research, feedback on our project and presentation, and connected us with experts and individuals who could help with our project. Everyone we reached out to was very welcoming and open to meeting and discussing with us, and from each person we talked to during this project, we learned something unique and insightful, and they helped introduce various perspectives that we didn't think of before. So don't be afraid to reach out to professors, experts, community members, and organizations and make those connections. Second, having good, committed, and passionate team members is very important. Kathy, Emily, and I met through a group project and didn't know each other before entering this competition. It took us time to get comfortable working, time commitments, and personal priorities. There was also no judgment as we were all learning together and were responsive to each other's opinions and ideas, which helped make our project cohesive. As a team, we had clear expectations and were committed to spending countless hours on the project together. Another key strength was that we were very adaptable to any changes and supported each other throughout the process when times were hard. Having self-awareness and reflecting on ourselves to understand our strengths and weaknesses was also crucial to improving our team as a whole. Finally, having the opportunity to connect and collaborate with people in the community was very important. Our relationship with the Unique Get Together Society gave us the opportunity to talk to people who are experiencing food insecurity and to understand urban Indigenous food insecurity in our local communities. Having this connection really strengthened our research and gave our project a more impactful understanding of the issue. From competing in Map the System, we learned about the structural inequities that are in place, which act as barriers to food insecurity. Through mapping the system, we see that it is a system-wide issue that requires all sectors to address together through a unified initiative. We gained a better understanding of our local system and were inspired by the many individuals, organizations, and community leaders who are at the forefront of addressing this issue. Researching this complex topic has broadened our perspectives and way of thinking to think more deeply and critically into issues and to think about the root causes versus addressing the symptoms. Overall, we've learned so much from competing in Map the System and have gained a greater understanding of the complexity of a system-wide societal issue. The first piece of advice that we have is to know your audience. Are you presenting to professors, students in arts, students in sciences?
It is important to have an idea of who will be listening so that you do not bombard them with jargon. It will also be helpful to assume that the majority of judges in the audience will not have as much familiarity with your topic as you do. Keep this in mind as you create your written portion, visual maps, and presentation. Ensure that your overall key points and message are clearly presented in your submission and that the format is coherent. Related to this is to make sure that you know your judges by doing research on the type of work that they have done, as they may ask questions related to their work. Thirdly, be open to feedback and try to see where the person giving the feedback is coming from. Throughout each phase of the competition, we consistently receive various feedback from judges, stakeholders, and mentors, and actively tried to edit our project based on feedback. At almost every phase of the competition, our presentation drastically changed from the last. With that being said, also try and practice presenting to a variety of audiences. This can include your friends, family, coworkers, professors, whoever that you can connect with. Different people will have different background knowledge, and you can evaluate how your research translates to different people. You will also gain valuable feedback. You should also leverage all resources available to you. This can include reaching out to stakeholders, mentors, and those with lived experience. Be careful reaching out to those with lived experience, as you would not want to cause harm. Make sure that you have full informed consent and that they have full access to all information you collected. Remember, their consent can be withdrawn at any time. Additionally, make sure that your research benefits them as well to avoid exploitation of those who are marginalized. You can also look at previous Map the System winners for inspiration. Try and pinpoint what they did that was effective. Fourth, consistently communicate with your team members. Set an organized goal and have due dates. Check in with each other often to make sure everyone is on the same page, that the submission is cohesive, and what to work on moving forward. Additionally, your presentation should be concise and clear. Remember that your judges have already analyzed your research, and you should only be highlighting key findings. Take a look at winning Map the System presentations and how they formatted their presentations. And remember etiquette. You should look like you are paying attention if your teammate is speaking. Look at them, nod, and focus. This influences the audience to pay attention as well. Speak slower than you think. Try to make your script a bit under the time. For example, aim for 4 minutes and 45 seconds if the presentation is maximum of 5 minutes long, so you don't feel like you need to rush through. You and your teammates should have the same dress code. A good idea is to also have unique matching backgrounds. We were the only team to have matching backgrounds, and it made us memorable to the judges. For the Q&A portion, you should create and practice strategies for what to do in case you become stuck on a question. Sometimes judges will ask you questions out of your scope of research. It is okay to acknowledge that. This is a better alternative than the entire team going silent. Ask your practice audience to come up with questions to ask you. We created a question bank for people to submit. The more you practice, the better you will be at answering questions on the spot. Here are some resources we used to get you started. Number 1 was the Cecil team for coaching and practicing presentations. We also reached out to UBC faculty members, other UBC departments, and local community organizations to gain their expertise and insight. We also looked at previous Map the System winners' materials to learn from their strengths. Overall, this was an amazing experience that I'm thankful I went through with Annika and Emily. We recommend anyone who is interested to give it a shot. We never thought our research would go as far as it did. Good luck, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily and team, for that really informative video. Okay, we can move on to our panel discussion for part of our event today. That was a great video that covered a lot of information, so thank you for that. I do invite our participants to use the chat function or our Slido link to ask anonymous questions for our members of the panel. To start us off, I think one question a lot of people have in mind before even beginning to think about their topic or ideas is forming a team, going about how they might form a team. So if you could speak about your experience in forming a team.
Yeah, so actually we were a bit lucky with that because from how we ended up submitting our project to Map the Systems was that we actually met through a public health nutrition course. And so we all got put together in this group for this project. And then from doing that project in the class, we decided that since we all worked on this project and I guess, had more background knowledge on this topic, and we were all pretty much on the same page, that led us to basically forming our team for Map the Systems. And yeah, so we had enough people basically to be able to complete the submission, as well as we've already done some work on the topic. So that's kind of how we went about forming our team. And yeah, we didn't end up reaching out to anyone outside or in the group project to, I guess, join our team basically.
Awesome, thank you. I personally find that your topic was really interesting. How did you choose the topic? How did you find a suitable topic when you were participating?
Yeah, so with our class project, for that one, we had to work with, we got to work with a community partner. And so our community partner, UGTS, specifically, we looked at their food insecurity program. So they had a food basket program. And so from that, we when we did the research on food insecurity for Indigenous peoples in BC, we kind of found that there was a lot of complex and broad questions, such as, like, the key one was that there wasn't a lot of current data and research on it. So I think that was kind of what drove us to submit that key question to Map the Systems. And so I think from that kind of gave us the foundation of our topic. So focusing on food insecurity for Indigenous peoples, and then kind of brainstorming the different issues we came across and from the research, as well as considering what was realistic and achievable within the time frame, because we didn't start it until around February when we submitted our research topic, and it's due in April. So you only have a few months to come up and complete the submission. So I think we ended up narrowing it down to Lower Mainland in BC rather than covering all of BC. And then, as well as looking at past finalist submissions, we didn't want to repeat a topic that was covered previously. So I think that helped us narrow our topic, because I think there was a previous submission we found where they did actually food insecurity for Indigenous peoples in BC, but they did it in more rural areas and in areas such as reserves. And so we wanted to put more focus on in an urban area, and such as the Lower Mainland.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I know that you guys were a very successful team and a very successful project as you went on to win the global final last year. I wanted to ask you about your experience going through to both the national finals and the global final. What was that like?
Yeah, so I think we felt the most pressure from there was a lot of pressure from both the national and the global, but I think when we were at nationals, it felt a lot more intense than actually the UBC competition. But I think going through the UBC competition, it helped us feel more prepared, since we were able to present a few times, and then also get a lot of feedback from the CECL team and the judges. Because yeah, especially Angela, who's here, she gave us a lot of really good feedback that I think really propelled our project and final submission in the right direction. Also, I think it was more intimidating because our competitors had strong submissions, as they were the winners from their schools as well. And so we actually, I think in the UBC competition, we didn't come across anyone who had like food insecurity who covered that topic. But once we got to nationals, that's when we started to come across, I think, two or three other schools who also were covering food insecurity. And so that put a bit more pressure on us to try to really present our topic well. Also, I think at nationals, a lot of the judges were aware of or also involved in Indigenous related issues. And so specifically for our topic, we found the questions that were given to us at nationals were a lot more specific to certain aspects of our research and submission than from globals, because from globals, we found that it was more broad in terms of like systems thinking, or I guess the questions were generally more, oh, how could you apply the things you learned in the future, or for possible solutions, things like that. And then I guess with the global finals, we felt a lot of pressure as well, but I think we were quite prepared just because we went through the UBC finals presenting a couple of times there, as well as presenting at the nationals. You present 2 or 3 times there as well. And so there, I guess, other school submissions, we knew they were also really well done, and those people were also really prepared as well. And so I think when we got there, yeah, we felt a lot more prepared just because we got so much feedback. And then throughout, we also were able to edit our project and resubmit it for each phase of the competition. So I think that helped us feel more prepared for the globals. And I think because it was virtual as well, it was less intimidating, I guess, because it almost felt like we weren't actually there, because it's all through a screen and all on Zoom, basically. Yeah, and I think another difference between nationals and globals is that with nationals, because the time difference wasn't as drastic, we were able to be a bit more involved, and like they had events and things like that, and networking events. So we were able to attend some of those and be able to talk more with like previous people who were finalists, as well as the judges. But I think in globals, because the time difference was so drastic, like we would be, I think when we would present, it was like 5 a.m. in the morning, 6 a.m. And then when they had these events for networking, we weren't able to really attend those because they were just at really bad times. So yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to move on to our next member of the panel, Yusuf. My first question for you, how has your experience been as a adjudicator involved with Map the System in the past?
It's to follow up. I think what Emily was just sharing some really great insights, and as an adjudicator here at UBC, I mean, I could speak to the range of projects and the type of projects that you would see within the competition or within the kind of the research that's going on at the UBC level. And it sounds quite different, to be honest, than I think Emily put it in terms of the experience that a researcher or that a project team might face at the national and the global level. My experience at the UBC level, I think, has been wonderful for me. I think just to see the number of students coming out, the number of people interested in engaging with societal challenges, with issues that we're all facing, and understanding that I think it's been a long game when it comes to student involvement in addressing social challenge, but to understand that it takes a real dedicated effort to map out what the issue is, to figure out, to identify the problem is actually part of the, one of the most difficult parts of social change. And to see the amount of people that are willing to come forward and to work together, because I think at this level, at this stage in, for example, the annual program, it's really not, it's uncommon that teams are already formed and issues are already identified. And part of what I really enjoy about it, even before we get to the competition table, is that people are coming forward looking for collaborators, looking to really explore the angles on an issue with a team before diving into it. Another thing I think I just like to point out from sitting on the side of the table when it comes to judging some of the research that's put forward is that you really get to see not just the range of issues, but the range of styles. Like, people really go about the work in different ways. And in the video that we all watched, I think it's probably got the most comprehensive list, but I would really just second, like, as a judge or an adjudicator here, like, you're going to step forward with a team most likely. You're probably going to divide up your research, if not your presentation as well. Probably usually it's both. Think about how that translates from the writing to the in-person or the delivery of the presentation. Think about how the presentation of it can actually take you quite far in terms of like the written research is one thing. You can save written research that's not like top of the pile by getting a really solid presentation together. So put some thought into that. Think about the clarity with which you put forward your case or you map the issue. Think about the structure of the presentation and think about the order of the slides. And when you have a strong presenter, somebody who can deliver a message in a strong way, make sure that you're leading or ending with someone who's got that capability. Just from our end, you know, really as a judge, just remember, like Emily was saying, we get to hear so many, and we're all coming from places where we may or may not have expertise or even like a moderate understanding of the issue you're really diving into. So if you can craft that call to action, or if you can really have a closer that lands those points solidly for someone who might not be deeply engaged in that issue area, I think it'll go a long way to leaving an impact on the judging panel. But lots I enjoy. I'll leave it there and we can move on. How about that?
Thank you very much, Yusuf, for that. I'm going to move on to some of our questions from the audience from our Slido poll, and I will open this up to both of you. Our first question: how can you begin your research if you have no resources or access to contacts?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us, because we didn't actually start reaching out to people and like getting lots of feedback until I'd say, I think we got the most feedback after like the UBC or during the UBC competition. It was after we had to submit for the UBC competition basically. And so I think from the beginning, we just got a lot of our research. We did talk to a few people, but a lot of our research came from just like looking at databases and things like that. So I think I would start with that. And then I would start looking at, like, for example, we kind of, from UBC, we branched out to other people because the people we got to talk to, faculty members and people such as even on the Cecil team, they connected us with other people who might be more familiar with our topic or who could give us really good feedback. So it kind of just built from there. So I would start with looking at UBC or like locally at first. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I'd just like to second that one of the great resources you guys have as potential participants is the Center for Community Engaged Learning. We can help connect you with access to contacts or resources. The next question I have is, what resources did you use to learn systems way of thinking?
So I think on mapthesystem.ca, the Canada website, they have a really comprehensive booklet guide on the different, I guess, parts that you have to include in your submission. And I think they did a really good job of explaining the different areas. So we use that to help us understand the concepts and terms. We also had discussions amongst ourselves as well, because I think with the guidelines, sometimes they can be up to interpretation or also like not very specific. So I think discussing with your team and coming to a consensus and agreement on what a gap and what a lever is really helpful. Also, I think talking about the different terms and concepts, if you have any questions with like the Cecil team, for example, or other people that you're getting feedback from, or those who happen to be involved in systems thinking and have applied those concepts, are also really helpful too in getting a better understanding of the terms. And I think we didn't have a full understanding of those concepts and terms until like halfway near closer to like nationals, globals, like that end of the competition. So I think it's kind of just a consistent, just learning as you go along. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I also want to point out that we will be running a systems thinking workshop in mid-February for those interested after the registration deadline. So that's a resource that you have access to. The next question is related to time commitment. So there are two questions related to that. The first one is, what is the time commitment to this project during a typical week?
For us, I think it got more frequent, our meeting times and length of time as after the UBC competition, because I think that's where we made the most changes to our submission and made the most edits. So I think leading up to the UBC competition, I'd say it was definitely at least once a week, around 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours. And then, because I think we could have planned our time a bit better, but like for the few days leading up to the due date, we had definitely spent quite a few hours refining things and wrapping up. But I think after that, it was for sure, at least, I think if you expect to make those edits from the feedback and want to like improve your submission as you go along, I would say, yeah, at least once a week, at least 2 hours, 3 hours a week, and then possibly more as you get closer to the deadline.
Thank you for that. The next question related to the similar concept, they're asking, how long did it take for you to put together your first draft of the project, including the written portion and the map?
I can't recall like an exact number of hours, but I'd say it took at least, I think it was over 20 hours to do the first. I think when we came up with our first draft, I think it took a couple meetings. So I'd say between like 10 hours, 20 hours around. Yeah, so around that amount of time.
Awesome. Thank you. Yusuf, I have a question for you. Can you ask for feedback or mentorship?
Can students ask for feedback or mentorship? Is this a question?
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Along the way, I think it's always good to know and good to make clear that the Center for Community Engaged Learning is always there. If there's any point, whether it's at the outset, kind of understanding like how do I go about a systems-based approach or analysis, or first, or so far as a deeper question that you might have around, okay, now that I've got clarity on the issue or the area I'd like to begin mapping, who are some of the faculty members that the Center for Community Engaged Learning might have connections to or could refer me to doing that kind of work that could help guide the structure or provide some feedback on a presentation that demands some expertise in a disciplinary area. So yeah, definitely the right thing to do is just reach out and ask. And if you frame your question, I think the same way you might even approach a community partner, frame it in a way that if that person can't support you, that maybe they know somebody who does. So yeah, don't be shy.
Awesome, thank you. I know there are a few more questions I can see in the Slido, but for the sake of time, I will be taking notes on these questions and answering them later in the session. But for the sake of time, we're going to wrap up our panel discussion section. So again, I'd like to extend a big thank you to Emily and Yusuf for joining us and answering these questions. Thank you very much. And we're going to move on to the next portion of this session, which is our networking activity. So there are going to be 4 breakout rooms to join, each with a different Map the System track area: climate, social, economy, and health. I invite you to start to join the breakout room for whichever topic you might be interested in. We will be rotating once after a 20-minute interval. And the facilitators in each breakout room will be able to tell you a little bit more about each track area. And also you'll have a chance to talk to other students interested. I invite you all to just scan this QR code and take a moment to fill out this evaluation survey for the end of our session today. That'll help us in our future programming and best ways to assist you and other students in the future. It's a short survey, so if you would take like a minute to fill that out. I also want to remind you, if you have any questions, you can email me or reach out to the center. A reminder that the registration deadline for Map the System is February 7th. And to enroll in our Canvas course if you want more information and resources. But thanks for joining us today.